Good evening and welcome to Set Up for Success. I'm your host, Tracy Answer. I am the host of Set Up for Success, a YouTube channel. And this YouTube channel has been set up for parents to help you get the most out of your children and to provide the best resources that we can for our children to set them up for success. So, Richard. So it's my husband playing in the background. This evening, I am joined with two fabulous ladies, Shola Story and Mrs. Charmaine Cousins Roach. So welcome, ladies. And I have a bio from Shola. So Shola is a British trained qualified teacher. I didn't ask you what type of teaching you did, Shola. What type of teacher are you? Primary or secondary?
Secondary trained.
Secondary trained. Brilliant. And she's an education and parenting consultant, speaker, and best-selling author. She's a multi-award winning entrepreneur in the private education business. She's the education director and owner of two thriving and successful education tuition centers in London and Essex. I'm the creator of Parent Box. She has devoted the last 20 years of her life to educating children and working with families. So welcome, Shola.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. And we have my gorgeous friend, teacher, co-worker, Mrs. Charmaine Roach. And Charmaine has been an educator for 20 plus years in mainstream education across different countries. Charmaine has been closely associated with educators who have worked in private education for a number of years. And most importantly, Charmaine is a mother of two wonderful children. So welcome, Charmaine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I said gorgeous to Charmaine and not gorgeous to Shola. You're both gorgeous. So thank you for both being here. So tonight's conversation, we're going to be discussing alternatives to typical mainstream education. And so I've invited both of you on here because of your background. Shola, your background in the grammar school system, and Charmaine, your background and experience in the boarding school system. So I'm going to start with Shola. Shola, what inspired you to into the grammar school system? Tell us your story.
Right. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you for having me. Again, I started out as a teacher in the state mainstream system. I remember the first experience I had during my teacher training year. Actually, before teacher training, because of course, one of the requirements was for you to go into a school just to observe. I mean, in a way, what you're trying to get yourself into. And I remember that fateful day in East London. I'm not going to mention the name of the school. I got in that morning, sat in as an observer during the lesson, and there was an incident I would never forget in my life, and this was me, a young mother. My daughter was just about a year old then. I mean, she's 22 now. I got into the classroom, sat at the back of the classroom, and all I could do during that time was think about what can I do to actually change that episode. And that was what informed my decision to becoming a teacher, number one, because I left that day mixed feelings, thinking, do I want to get myself into this, or do I go in and make a difference? And I'm so grateful to God that I actually took the latter decision, going in and making a difference. So whilst in there, I began to, of course, teach, became a teacher, started teaching, of course, in the normal classroom setting. But I was fortunate enough to have a fantastic head teacher during my first few years. She actually agreed to me having smaller groups, working with the students in smaller groups. And I actually saw the impact with working in smaller groups, with the results. And when I left mainstream, I left because of personal reasons. I mean, I had a second child. He wasn't settling well at nursery. So I just thought, what are my values? Family first. And then I started teaching in smaller groups. And that led me to finding about the grammar school and, the exams, working with smaller groups. And my daughter was about, well, there's 6.5, 7 years between the both of them. So we began to work towards these exams, and lo and behold, got through. So that was more or less my inspiration. Saw the differences within the grammar and the state sector, saw that if you have the potential, if you have the capacity, you can work with your child and get them into those schools. They're exam based. And those were some of the things that inspired me. My experience during my first day in school. And of course, when I had to leave mainstream teaching and began to work in smaller groups, finding out about the grammars, finding out what it offers, and of course, working with my own child. I don't want to use it as a guinea pig, and found out that yes, you could actually get your child through that and make a success. So those were the things that made me begin to explore and help parents and help their children get into this type of schools.
Okay, thank you. And Charmaine, if you'd like to tell us your journey or your inspiration that made you opt for boarding school.
Right. Well, you know what? You said opted for it, but it sort of happened in our situation. But to begin with, like Shola was saying earlier, sometimes your circumstances can make you change your mode of thinking. And for us, I mean, my husband, he works full time. I mean, he's a GP, and I'm a full time teacher, right? And we found that, you know what, our circumstances demand that you work very hard and we love our jobs, but you find out that you're constantly out working and you're sort of limited to exploring other areas. And we would like our children to be educated and educated well, but also to give them a broader base. So it's not a case where they're just going to go to mainstream school and that's it. There are other opportunities. So when we had our daughter, we looked at it and we said, you know what? We should start exploring other areas, just see where talent lies, and because of that, we said, you know what, let's try tennis. We started sports. She did all the sports. She would swim, she did athletics, she did everything. And also she was academically able as well. So when we started to do that, we realized she was inclined to do both. But then in a mainstream school, you're a bit limited to do both at the highest possible level. And what we found, she she would miss a lot of school, but how the system is designed and being in that system is not that we don't want to, but the system doesn't facilitate that, where if kids miss 2 months of school, it's easy for them to catch up. While private schools and boarding schools, they're more flexible to meet the individual needs of students. And later on, we talk about the pros and cons of boarding and private schools. We'll elaborate on that. So that was our main part of it, because she was talented. And then we realized that, you know what, mainstream for her is not necessarily going to help her to become, recognize her full potential, if we should put it that way. So
Yeah,
that was her big inspiration to explore boarding and private schools.
brilliant. Thank you. So, Shola, going back to you now. If somebody is thinking about grammar school, what are the entry routes into grammar school?
Right. The first thing that I'd always say or suggest is your child has to be prepared for an exam. There's a selective exam that your child would have to write. Um, it's that they're different. I'm not going to go into all the details now because that will take the whole evening. But your child has to write a selective exam at their first term of year 6. So there has to be preparation, because it's actually become very competitive over the years, because a lot more children are competing for a limited number of spaces. So the first thing is making sure your child is prepared, ready to do those exams and do really well, because of the competition that there is with those exams. So that's the that's to put it in a summary. That's what they need to to do. Yeah.
And how early should parents start preparing their children for those exams?
What I always suggest and I say is right from the cradle, right from when your child is able to express themselves, because for some of these schools, you have to be able to speak well. You'd have to have a lot of word knowledge. Your vocabulary has to be extensive, your numbering skills. So, right from the onset, begin to get your child into the habit of learning whilst playing, because it's a lot of work. So, if they do not develop that routine or the habit of learning, then it becomes a struggle. So I would always say right from the cradle. But if you'd want to start to formally get them to sit down and practice for these exams, I'd always suggest at the beginning of year 4 of
Right.
primary school. Yes.
Brilliant. I know that you've got a child in also, you've both your children, one has been grammar school educated, one has been private school educated. So for the child that went to private school, what was their journey into private school?
Right. My child number 1 went through the grammars. She went to one of the top grammar schools within the country down in Essex here. But my child number 2, we decided for him to go down the independent route, because similar to what Charmaine said, he was he had quite a lot of spotting. I mean, as you can see, we were talking about this earlier on. His medals are right behind me here. We had to move from the sitting room downstairs into his room because they were actually getting crowded. The place was full. So he's more of a spotty type of child. So he was into quite a few spots. So whilst we were making the choice for him, football being his top spot, we looked at schools, the grammars that actually had football as their main, but there wasn't as many as them. So that made the decision for him to go to an independent school. So I always say, I mean, those that know me, my second book talks about you making the right choice for your child with regards to school, looking at the child as a whole, looking at the holistic part of a child and making those decisions. So in as much as he did well with the grammar schools, we had to look at the whole child, where he would thrive and do well, and his sports was one of the things that we thought, for him to be able to be himself and complete, we needed to make the decision for him to go there. And thank God there are, I know when we talk about independent schools, and I'm sure Charmaine would say the same as well, we kind of get put off because of the fee, because they're fee-paying schools, but there are options that we can tap into when we know, and we can take advantage of those. So those were some of the things we took advantage for him as well. So that's the reason why rather than going to the school he was offered the grammar, we decided to take him down the independent route.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. So Charmaine, I'd like you to talk about scholarships. If a parent is interested, what do they do about finding a scholarship, or what is a scholarship, first of all?
No, yes, good question. Because when you think of a scholarship, it's basically financial aid support for your child. So, as Shola mentioned, the fees can be off putting. So, when you think of an independent school, the first thing you'll see is the fees. If you inquire within, they're going to tell you how much per term. It's 10,000 per term or 15,000. And you're saying, okay, I can't afford it. And you may look the other way. However, the key thing here is to start by doing your research. Check out all the schools you're interested in, pull it up, it's online. Where are the independent schools close to where you live? You know your child, so you have to kind of say what's going to be best for your child, because not every child who is going to an independent school you may want to board, even though they may have boarding facilities, because you know your child. However, you're going to explore all the options and you're going to say, okay, what does this school have to offer me for my child? Now, the thing is, as was mentioned earlier, you have a large number of students vying for very small number of scholarships, these financial aids. They have bursaries that goes with them. So it's not a case where you could just walk in and say, okay, could I get the form? I want to apply for this. You have to be bringing something to the table. And it
Yeah.
can't be average either. It cannot be average. You have to be a cut above the rest. So, for example, if you're into sports, you need to be at the top of your game. You cannot be average. You cannot be just okay, because there are lots of people who are okay.
Hmm.
So, what you need to do, whatever sports you're in, you need to check out, is there sort of a ranking system? Try to get to the top of the rank. Because for these scholarships, you can apply for them, but believe it or not, if you're that good, they will seek you out.
Absolutely.
They will offer it to you. And that's the thing, for these limited positions, you most times when you have to go seek it out, it's a lot more difficult, because they've already gone and done their research, because they know who they want into their institution to help to give it a facelift or to promote it in a particular area.
Hmm.
So you have to make sure when you're going for this scholarship, which you want to support your child, financially throughout their learning, you want to make sure you're going in well equipped. Your child has been trained in the area. So if it's sports, they're at the top of their game. If it's academics, they've studied. Because another thing is, I mean, my daughter, she has been to 3 independent schools and she never applied to go to any, but it was all based on what she had done, and they approached us and actually
Right.
asked us if we wanted to get her in it, which we were thinking about it, we were looking, but at the same time, because she was doing so well, it can't be well regionally, you want to be nationally. So
Right.
Yeah.
nationally they can't help but see you and what you're made of.
Hmm.
So it's a case where if you want to apply for these scholarships, inquire within the schools, ask what they have. But the most important thing is you want your child to be equipped with the necessary skills and not just average. You want them to be at the very top of their game. And when they do that, the limited position will become theirs.
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Shola, so you were saying there were various fees or various, what are you saying? There were some advantages, things that people could tap into. If you
Yes.
could elaborate on that a bit more, please.
Yeah, I think Charmaine has done a fantastic job by speaking about the different types of scholarships. But with the scholarships, like Charmaine has rightly said, you can tap into the spots, but then, of course, your child should be playing. Because I remember when my son was applying couple of years ago, a number of years ago, the what they were requiring or asking for is, does he play not locally, nationally? Does he play does he play for a premiership
Yeah.
team? Then he was with the Chelsea Foundation. So they were asking those questions. So you have to be at the top of your game.
Right.
You could tap into the academics as well, which means out of the rest, you should be scoring the highest marks in the exams.
Mhm.
Actually, what happens is everybody takes the exams, you will be invited in for another form of academic scholarship test, because you've aced the test that everybody else has done. You've got drama, so it could be the creative, the arts, music as well. So if everybody else is, doing grade 5 piano, you should be at like grade 8 or grade, so you have to make sure that you're at the top. So there are different types. So you've got sports, you've got music, you've got the arts, you've got academic, and also you've got bursaries as well. But the differences between the scholarships and the bursaries is that with the bursaries, it's means tested. What that means in layman language is there will be a lot of digging into your expenses and
Right.
your income. So you would have to fill out some forms, elaborate forms. Some are as much as 14, 15 pages, looking and digging into your income, basically, to see that, yes, we really want this child. Parents cannot afford as much as that. How can we help? So they would want to know that what they are doing, this is with regards to the bursary, they are making the right decisions. They're funding this child because they cannot afford the fees, but this child will really want that child. So your child still has to do well enough for them to have access to those funds. So that's what I meant by don't be put off, just focus on working on your child, which is why I said earlier on, we start working from when they actually pop out,
Right.
from the cradle all
It's
the way,
it's
teaching them,
true.
enhancing those skills so they can stand out. Yeah.
Excellent. So, what if a parent feels that their child missed the year 7 entry point? Are there
Hmm.
other entry points that parents could aim for?
Sure. There are in-year admissions, so you could actually, if your child missed it in year 7, because we've had situations like that with some of our parents that unfortunately did not register. The children could not write the exam, because if you don't register for the exam, you can't do the exam. You could apply to do it at a different year, but the only difference is there's going to be limited spaces, because it would depend on the number of spaces that are available. So a child moves out, then yes, they can invite you to come and take a test, and you could get a place. You could also get a place at the 12 plus, the 13 plus as well. Some schools actually just admit you would have done the exam, but then they admit you at age 13 into the second half of secondary school. If that doesn't work, after your GCSEs. So what we say to parents as well is, moving from secondary school, you can also get your child to do really well, and they can get a place for sixth form in
Right.
the grammars or the independent schools. So if you missed it in year 7, there is still hope, you know.
Right.
But the most important thing right now is just to help support your child, so that when they're called upon to face the exams, they're ready, like Charmaine has rightly said.
Yeah.
So, what if a parent is watching and their child has any special educational needs? Are they excluded from these organizations?
No,
Right.
not at all. Not at all. Do you want to have a go, Charmaine, or you want me to?
Well, I wouldn't mind you going to, but it's good that Tracy said that, because when you have special educational needs, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna excel.
Absolutely.
You just learn differently. So
Hmm.
the opportunities are there for you as well. But
Yeah.
again, it goes back to what Shola said. We need to start working. We have to know our child,
Yeah.
start working with their talents and developing their talents. It may not happen the first instance, for example, year 7, but
Hmm.
then they could have the in-year entries because they may start later. But the
Hmm.
opportunities are open for all.
Yeah. I'll just thank you so much for that, Charmaine. I'll just share an experience that we had a couple of years ago. This young lad would now be in year 10, if I can remember. Um, he was a bit slow. Why? And this is what I always say to a lot of our parents, to just go and have an assessment. One of the things that I dip into all different, when I see organizations that can help, I'd always reach out, because there would be a child who would need the extra support. So I'd noticed he was slow, but he was really, loaded. And these exams are timed. So he got assessed, and he was visually partially impaired. Parents were not aware. So what then they had to do, what I then suggested they do, was to write to the consortium, or those that run the exams, and ask for extra help.
Yeah.
So he was given extra time, and of course, the boy is in year 10 in one of the top grammar schools today. So even if your child has special needs, that does not stop them, or
Mm.
that does not, not that doesn't stop them from also accessing the schools. But
Excellent.
we need, as parents, need to be aware of that. Number one. Number two, intervene, put the right intervention into play.
Yes.
Number three, inform the authorities, because they need to be included.
Yes.
We're in an inclusive society. So, yes, they also have, they can have access to these places as well. I always say every child has greatness in them. So,
Yeah.
it's looking for that greatness, and, you know, putting it in the right place. So, yes, every child, yes, definitely.
And I just want to add to that, Shola, because and maybe any parent who is listening who may have a child with special needs, because sometimes people believe that something is wrong with the child,
Mm,
and as a result, the child feels as if something is wrong with them, and the parent as well. They don't really understand it. I would say to the parent, explore your options. There are loads of options for you and your child to
mm,
support you if your child has special educational needs, and
Yes.
talk about it. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't feel as if it's something you need to be quiet about, because
mm.
it's normal.
Yeah.
Everybody can't be the same way. We're all different, and your child could be the next president or prime minister of this country, even
Hmm.
though they may have special educational needs today.
Hmm. just to buttress that point as well, Charmaine, I was reading an article on LinkedIn, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, about, I can't remember, it's something to do with technology, and this company are now having to employ, I think it's not kids, but people who are autistic, because they have the ability to actually figure out things quicker, than other people. So that is why, honestly, for me, I'd always say every child is special. There is
Yes.
greatness in every
Yes.
child. Now it's
Yes.
just finding it out
Yes.
and putting it in the right place. The world is such a big place now that can accommodate every single person. Not knowing is where the problem is, and there's no excuse anymore, because there's help everywhere. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. So, looking at the grammar school and the independent school and the obviously boarding now, what would you say are the pluses and the minuses of these educational establishments?
Okay. Do
You
you
want
want to
to
go?
show that? All right. Go, Shola, go for it.
I was just opening up to. This is my second, third book. I can't remember now. I get confused. And what I did in there is I actually wrote out the pros and the cons for all the three categories of schools, and of course, our wonderful comprehensive state schools as well. So, with the grammars, some I'm just going to that in and out of those. With the grammar schools, it's one of they offer an excellent education and a diverse extracurricular activities to their students. So that's one pro. One
Nice.
of the cons, because of course we hear, but we don't talk about the cons as well. Grammar schools have a divisive nature, which foster inequalities. And we hear that all the time, that because they are super selective, not
Yeah.
everybody, so that's one of the the cons. And I've also got here what makes a grammar school better than its counterparts, but I'm not going to go into all of those. I'm going to just look at the independent schools, if I can find it, comprehensive schools, the pros for those. I know we're not talking about that tonight, but it would also be nice to just share what the pros are. An independent school are granted freedom, like Charmaine has said, and more resources to develop an educational experience that meets each student's needs, without state textbooks, curriculum mandate. So they have the flexibility, they have the freedom to be flexible. So, of course, if a child is a superstar in tennis, like Charmaine rightly said, they're not penalized for not being in school because they are aware of why they are out of school. Because number one, it's fostering the gifts and the talents of the child, and it's also bringing something back to the table of the school. So that's an advantage. There's a con as well. There's quite a number of them. Like grammar schools, independent schools also foster divisiveness based on economic ability. Another con could be the cost. So unfortunately, if you don't make the criteria for the scholarships or the bursaries, we would have to fund it. But also there are, and I share this with a lot of my parents as well, if that comes to the last result, there are packages in place where the school can agree with you how to make the payment over periods of time, so you're not overwhelmed by having to put the whole lot down at once. So it's just like we've said this evening, research, find out what's available, and begin to work with that. And that's why it's important to start from when they're in the cradle. So even if we
Yeah.
have to have a pot where we're putting the money in, right from when they're babies, it is worth doing. Yeah. So yeah. I hope. I mean, I don't want to go into a lot more, but there's quite a lot of pros and cons for all the three categories of school. When we know, then we'll be able to make the right and informed decision as to where. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to Shola, actually, something which I find the kids cherish a lot in boarding is the friendships they establish. It seems like, of course, not everybody gonna get along, because the pro for that is they establish this lifelong friendship. They build up a family away from home. But then the cons, again, you have to think about it, because for some kids, the fact that they're away from home at boarding can affect them as well. And
Yes.
also, it's a case where they have to adjust to not being at home. So it's like it has one pro, you're building lifelong friends, but then the other bit is you're away from your family. And especially if you're close to your family, it could even lead to mental issues for you, because you get stressed out, you get worried, you get depressed, different things could happen. However, on the plus side, if it's a really good boarding school, they put measures in place so you actually don't have that time to sit and worry. So you have the exit weekends where the child would go home. As parents, you have to be prepared. That's the other thing. As a parent, you have to be able to make sacrifices when you've made this decision for your child, because it's a case where even if they're 500 miles away and they're in the same country, you may decide, even though you come in tired on a Friday, but your child want to see you, and you may have to go to see your child who is in boarding, just to get them away from that environment, regroup, build that family bond, and then they can go again for the fresh week. So it requires lots of sacrifices. So it's good in a lot of sense, because it gives you that community feeling, being away, but at the same time, family, I believe in family first. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
very important that even if your child is away, you keep that link going and the family bond regardless.
Yeah. I remember speaking to someone, I think they had 3 different children in 3 different boarding schools.
I mean, Tracy, I actually, I mean, from what we're saying, it's also, kind of echoing in my mind some of the thoughts that I had many years ago when I had my second child. I mean, there's about 6 and 3/4, 6 years and 3/4 months between the both of them, and it was when I had him that reality set in because he was completely different from his sister right from the onset. I knew I had my work cut up for me. But knowing your child, understanding your child. Some children will go into the budding arena because I've had parents who we've worked with in the past that they've been in there and they just could not cope. So
Yeah.
they had to make changes. So it's just making sure that you know your child,
Yeah.
knowing their person, their personality, and working with that because they evolve as they go. So it's very important
Yeah.
because, like Charmaine rightly said, some would go in there and they will do well. They would thrive. They would come up with some fantastic friendship groups. Some would go in there and they would crumble. So it's just knowing your child and supporting your
Yeah.
child and working with your child based on that knowledge of who they are. So that would be honestly my advice to any parent, not looking at what A is doing or looking at B
Yeah.
is doing, because even within a family, you've got 3 children in 3 different boarding schools. Yes, if that's the case, then hey, you know, it's the price we pay as parents.
Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Well, that's a good point you said because I know of a family whose child was in grammar school, but she wasn't happy there.
Yeah.
And also, listening to your child. I mean, obviously, you listen and you respond accordingly, and you make adjustments. And that child eventually left grammar school and went into a state secondary
Mhm.
school because she just wasn't happy. you
Mm.
know, wasn't
Mhm.
happy with the atmosphere. It could be the competitiveness, who knows?
Mhm.
But there was
Mhm.
something in there. She just wasn't happy and went into the state system that actually was happier there.
Mhm.
Maybe it was more relaxed. So, as
Mm.
you said, being prepared to listen to your child and
Yep.
to make the necessary adjustments.
Mhm. Mm.
Yes.
So, talking just a bit more about the boarding schools and the private schools. So in terms of culture, and obviously our children being children from African and the Caribbean, how do you feel they fit in, or did it not play a part at all in them being in these environments?
Well, I'll go here. I'll jump in because the first boarding school my daughter went to, she didn't like it. But it was at an early age as well. She was 10. I remember she started she started year 6, but she was only go able to go to year 6 for about 3 days to go and say goodbye to her friends and sign shirts and everything. And then she left in year 6 and went to the first boarding school. But as you said before, you need to listen to your child because we used to travel midweek to her. It was somewhere over there in Surrey, so it took a while to get there. But sometimes midweek after work, we would jump in the car and we would go see her. But she wasn't happy because one, she wasn't. I don't think she was fully prepared. So she
Mm.
was talented. She was learning her sport. She was doing it, but we're a close knit family as well. So what happened in a case like that? You would talking to her, she would say yes, she went to school, she did her
Mm.
sport, she did everything. But as a parent, listening in the background,
Mhm.
you realize, my child isn't happy,
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
child isn't happy. And at that age, sometimes they don't fully know how to express themselves. They're not going to say, I'm not
Absolutely.
happy because
Mhm.
they have somewhere to sleep. They travel by car every day to school. They have food, so their basic needs are met. But that emotional need,
Mm.
it could be missing. And you have to listen to your child. And then I remember one day I said to my husband, you know what? um, regardless of what, I know she has talent, but we're gonna have to take her out of that school. And he said, I agree with you. I agree with you. Because we could tell she wasn't happy. And, as it would go, she left that school, she went to another school, and she was just blossoming. You wouldn't
Mm,
believe it's the same child, and yet it was still an independent school. Now, you said something earlier, Tracy, that how accepted, we find that, as ethnic minorities, we go in these schools. Now, it's funny, the first school she went in, there were more people of her kind in that school. But yet, it seemed as if, maybe because they're direct competitors, I don't know, but that was the school she faced. Well, now that she's older, I found out that she was being bullied by her own, but it was based on, she was talented and people could see that as a threat. And as a result, they would say things to her that wouldn't make her happy. But at that time,
mm,
realized that's what was happening. She wouldn't say anything, she would just let it go by. While she went in another school where she was more readily accepted, it had fewer minorities, but yet she was excelled to the top very quickly. Everybody recognized her for her talents. There were other people there as well, but she got more recognition for what she was able to do in this
mm.
second school. And that just helped her esteem, and she was a lot happier. She wanted to go out. So it varied, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I really liked that you shared that, Charmaine, because honestly, um, our children do not know how to express themselves at that very young age. So we
Yeah.
really need to have our eyes open and
Yes.
our inner ears open as well to be able to pick
Yes.
those cues. Similar experience with my daughter as well back then, because we were also contemplating boarding then, I mean, she's the first. We tried everything. I mean, I can't remember the number of exams that the blessed child wrote then, because of course she was capable and
Of
she embraced it. Um, and I remember this fateful morning, we were at the middle of the juncture of making the decision of where she was going to go. And we were getting ready to go to school, year six then. And I looked at her face and I saw that she wasn't herself. So I asked her, "Is everything okay?" "Oh yes, mommy. Yes, mommy. Yes,
mm-hmm.
mommy." Just, and I thought, hmm. So whilst we were driving to school that morning, I just said, "Oh, actually." Because it was getting to the end of year six. "Oh, how is it with your friends? Are you there?" And she then started talking about, yeah, apparently, mom, if I go to that school and I don't go to that school, the both of them start with a CH, mommy, I know I got a place at that school, but I really, and I said, "Oh, do you not want to board?" She said, "I don't want to go to boarding school. I want to be at home, mommy." And that did it for me. In fact, regardless of what the school was or what was going to be offered, I just said to my husband when we got back as well that evening, I said, "This school, I'm not sure about it." Although we were praying, thinking, not made a decision yet because she had quite a number of opportunities. Um, if not, we would have, because it was a very good, I mean, but she did not feel right to go there. So honestly, it's very important to observe rather than just listen to them, because like you said, probably didn't know how to express herself, didn't want to let mommy and daddy down as well, because we were, jumping from one exam or one interview or one, gone done all of that and thinking, oh, after doing all of that, not wanting to, and then, we've had this interview, they've offered this scholarship, we've been backwards and forwards, so it's really important just to pay attention. And I mean, it's amazing, Sha. I mean, yours was obviously over the phone, having a chat with her. You could feel that
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't, you could feel. So
Yes.
we really need not to dismiss those, those feelings with our children. Um, yeah. So thank you for that, because that kind of reminded me of the experience we had. I mean, she's 22 now, so that's number of years ago. Yeah. So just paying attention
To
to
your
them.
child.
Yeah, yeah. And my son as well, with most his friends are, are more of the, it depends on the child, and it
Yeah.
depends on how they're accepted in the environment. Because I mean, he's just come back. Well, he came back today with his shirt signed because it's the last. He's in year 11, by the way. And my daughter and I were looking through all of the sign. We're saying, "Oh, who's that? Oh, that's that. Who's that?" So I said, "I hope." And they were going, "Oh, all the best, bro." And I'm thinking, "Oh, wow, bro." So we were just having bantering about it and said, "Yeah, we're all." So I guess it depends on the child. It depends on how they're accepted. It depends on, so it doesn't really matter, from my point of view, depending on the child. Some would thrive there, some wouldn't, but it's just observing and paying attention to your child.
I remember when we were considering a boarding school for our daughter, and we went to visit the grounds. And one of the things that struck me was the grounds. I felt that the environment there was a world away from ordinary state school environments. The space,
Yeah.
the you'd have tennis courts, you'd have swimming pools, you'd have cricket ground, you'd have this ground, you'd have acres. And I mean, how do you feel that the actual environment impacts on your child's well-being, Charmaine?
Well, you know what? I think that's where parenting comes in. You have to keep your child grounded,
Absolutely.
and what the real values of life are. What are the values of life? What do you put emphasis on? And
Yes.
also, as a parent, some may be able to more than others, but it's so important that you allow them to experience different things in life as well. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you go on holidays and they would see these things and recognize that, look, it's not a big deal. It's just, okay, it's a swimming pool, it's here, but these are material things. It's a means to an end. Don't let this thing get to you, because
Mm.
at the end of the day, this is not what makes you into who you are. It's
Absolutely.
there, you can enjoy it, you can have fun, but at the end of the day, it's you as an individual. And how do you want to see yourself 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What are you going to set up for yourself? We
Mhm.
always tell our children, try to build your own house. How do you
Mm.
want your house to look? And when we say that, we don't mean a physical house. We're
Yes.
not talking about the building now, but you within yourself, you are your temple, and you need to know how you want to build that temple. And as
Mm.
a result, there are certain ground rules we teach them, and material things is just not one of them that you hold on to and put that above anything else. So for example, they'll see stuff like that and it's like nothing, and I talk about this because my daughter in particular, she has to learn a lot of resilience, because it's a case where she has to adapt from one environment to another really quickly. It's a case where she could, I've had instances where she would fly in from one country, sleep in the airport, and have to leave the next day to go somewhere else.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's a case where for her, I know when I was growing up, it was a novelty to fly on an airplane. What is it like? But then you kind of show her that, look, it's just another walk of life,
Mm.
right? It's a means to an end. It's like you would take the bus, right? You're going to London, and then you decide, oh, you have to go the opposite direction. You just have to go elsewhere. And
Mm.
it's really, really important that you keep your children grounded on
Mhm.
the right value system.
Mhm.
And if you do that, regardless of what comes, they will remain grounded. They'll
Mm.
always go back to home, the house that you taught them to build. And as I said, I don't mean physically the temple.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charmaine.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I 100% agree, Charmaine. because, of course, it's what's is in the inside that actually makes, rather than what's out there, So what are the core ideologies, the core values that we, expose, teach them, and tell them about? And that's what will come out. I mean, sometimes they might err a little bit, but because it's in there, it will eventually come
Yeah.
out and help them to, yeah. Mhm.
So how do you combat? You said in a lot of grammar schools there were did you say divisiveness?
Yes, what I meant by that is it's not open to everyone, like the comprehensive schools, the state schools,
So
which
with
is
that, sorry, so building on that,
mm,
how do you I don't know if your child experienced that, because you now you passed a certain test, you achieved something compared to others. How did you help to keep your daughter from not feeling like, well, I've arrived, you guys haven't?
I mean, what happened was when she got there, it was a case of actually helping her to see that she's earned the space there rather than she's arrived, because she was contending with the best, if that
Right.
makes sense. But the other thing now on the other side of the spectrum was, you know, when she's coming back on the bus, on the train, she sees some of her primary school friends that, went to primary school together, who were still within the borough, or within because she went to school out of um, a borough. See them at Lakeside, which is the shopping center, and she's like, "Gosh, mom, how come they're not at home?" Because of course she's rushing home to come and get her homework done, because they get homework, every evening, which is a lot, I felt then. Um, so I then had to explain to her that because of the level, the standard, at those schools, everyone has passed an exam. They're taking you from that level and moving you up. But in the comprehensive school, they're also taking them from what level they are and moving them to get to that level. So it was just constantly explaining the
Right.
reasons behind, that end, and also trying to make sure she keeps on top of her work to be able to stay within the bracket that so it's actually both of them. And I'd always say it's also supporting them as well, you know
Yes.
being able to hear them out and explain, as best as you can to them, that yes, these are the reasons why, they're still out there, chatting away, and you have to come and get your homework done. And then if you've got time, then you can join, but there wasn't that time, because of course it was ready to go to bed for the next school day. Yeah, so it just constantly explaining these things to them. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
So, thank you so much for your time. But so wrapping up, if there are parents considering, I'll go to Charmaine, boarding school, do you have any final words of advice to any parent who's probably considering putting their child forward to boarding school?
Well, there is a very a part of my philosophy. It comes from the Bible, and I have to just share this. I mean, you don't have to be a Christian, but it's my philosophy. There's this verse that I always think about: "Seek and ye shall find." Because, and I won't go in the rest of it, but that, just those few words. If you want your child to go to boarding school or private school, start seeking. There are many boarding schools out there. There are many opportunities out there, and they're there for your child as well. If you believe, you might have been listening to us, and we probably started from the child was just out of the womb, or the cradle, maybe even while they're in the womb, you started grooming them there. But if you feel that you have missed the window, I would say don't feel that way,
Yeah,
because people can have different starting points.
yeah,
So say you want your child to go to a boarding school, an independent school, start doing your research. Where do you want your child to go? What is your child excelling in? Because if you don't want to have to pay the full fees, then your child will have to be outstanding in something. That's a fact. Because if they don't have that quality, then I'm afraid they will not get in. That's just the reality of it. But it's not too late to start training your child. So if that's the route you want to go, you want to explore it, start training your child in a particular discipline. If they're academically inclined, go that route. The other thing, don't believe that because your child isn't the brightest child and they're talented in one way, they're gonna be left out, because that's where the balance comes in again,
Mm.
because each child is different. So
Woohoo.
you may have a child who is very good at sports, they average on academics, because yes, we want them to be able to handle themselves academically. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure they can manage, but don't feel, oh, my child not clever, they're just not going to get in an independent school, they won't get a scholarship. Don't think that way, because the opportunities are there for you as well. So go for it, research, inquire. All the information is there. If you get in touch with these independent schools and say, do you have any scholarships? Could I get some information about it? This information is readily available. They will give you the information, they'll point you in the direction. You may look at it and you see the requirements, the prerequisites. Then you say, okay, do I meet these? If you
Mhm.
don't, then you start to say, well, I need to start doing this. Okay, so I might need to start getting my child to learn an instrument. Maybe it's not a case where they're good at sport. Let them learn an instrument. They've always
Yes.
liked to play drums. Maybe they could develop that into something else. Just
Yeah.
explore the option with your child. Give them that opportunity. But most of all, as a parent, you're going to have to be willing to make sacrifices for your child. And that means long days, long hours, traveling to different places to give them those opportunities. Because I wouldn't say that my daughter became a very good tennis player or I'm developing my son and they're doing it on their own. No,
Mm-mm.
it requires sacrifice on your part, and you would have to make that decision. Sometimes you wouldn't be able to do things for yourself, but you
Right.
do it for your child to give them that opportunity. And but just remember, it's there for you as well. You just have to make that conscious decision. I'm going to give my child this opportunity and I'm going to start now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Shola?
Oh gosh, better just start from where you stopped, Charmaine. Yeah, if you
Perfect.
don't seek, you will not find, you know. And what I would also like to just say in addition to that is do your research, like she rightly said. If you've got the time, you've got the energy to do that. But if you don't, there is something readily available that you can tap into. Um, I'm actually just going to ask Tracy if it's okay for me to just share this. That parent box, which is my creation, has all the information put together in one box for you. So where you need to find, when you should be finding, when to start them when they're in primary school, what happens if they've missed that bracket, that window, secondary school, what you can do to help them to actually get through. All of that is wrapped up nicely in my creation. I call it my golden project because I actually sat down a couple of years before I turned 50 a year ago, 51 now, and just
Never tell.
created that. Pardon?
Can
You can
never
never
tell.
tell. Yeah, you're
Oh,
looking very good.
shouldn't have said that then. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I have on offer for every parent who would like to tap in. So if you can't sit down and do the research, you're busy trying to fend for a living, that's already done for you. If you can't lay hands on that, this is my second book, Parents Third, actually, second, third. Choose the right school for your child. All of that information is in there as well. So if you'd want to find out all about that, just type my name, Shola Alabi, on Google, and hopefully it should get you to where you can get all of those resources. So seek and you will find.
You're,
Also, sow and
you,
then you would reap. So
yeah.
sow into them right now and then sit back in a number of years and enjoy, because looking at your children do well is enough of fulfillment and enjoyment and happiness for us as parents. And that's where I really want us to be as parents, putting in the hard work, the sacrifices, and then sit back, honestly. And
Mm.
the children will definitely know, I mean, not that we'll be waiting on them by the grace of God, but of course, they will know that, wow, mom deserves this, dad deserves this, because of the running helter skelter around. And of course, the monetary investments as well. So seek and you would find. So and you would definitely be reaping the harvest in due time. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you, Shemaine. I'll
Yes,
be
thank you.
reaching
Thank
out a lot
you so
more.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you both. That was just really enlightening. I've learned so much. And thank you, Shola, for sharing your information so people know how to find you. Type her name, Google her, Shola Alabi, and you'll find her and her books and her parent box and everything she has. She's on Facebook. And Charmaine, thank you so much. I know you were probably dreading what have I got to say, but you had so much
Yes,
insight, and your insight, precious gems they were. So thank
absolutely.
you both of you were absolutely amazing, and I really, really, really do appreciate you sacrificing your evening
Okay.
to
Yes.
share your nuggets of knowledge to all the parents that are listening and that will listen to this show. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I will see you again in the future.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you
thank
so much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for watching.